Committee meeting minutes from the Planning Commission, February 15th.
I'll move to acknowledge 4.1 Planning Commission minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Pomeroy to acknowledge the receipt of the approved Planning Commission February 15th meeting minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved. Consent comments and approval of the agenda. Mr. Fritz? Commissioner Kavesi? Nothing. Commissioner Pomeroy? Commissioner Olson? Commissioner Jacob?
Nothing for me.
Attorney Sonneman?
Just a couple.
Couple?
Maybe.
Okay. Okay, all right. All right, and I'll just have one announcement if it needs to be made. All right, so with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Mr. Fritz, if you'd read our agenda.
I will do that. Consent business, committee recommendation 6.1, designate use of local option sales tax funds for Winona County share of Huff Street, Highway 61 traffic signal replacement and approach roadway improvement project. 6.2, approve conditional use permit for Erickson Family Shady Maple to allow dog kennel facility. Department recommendation 6.3, approve enterprise master agreement, master equity lease agreement, and master management and fleet rental agreement. 6.4, approve remote check deposit agreement with Winona National Bank. 6.5, approve grant agreement with SEMCAC for prevention, education, screening, and treatment of STIs. 6.6, approve renewal of agreement with Family and Children's Center for intensive tracking program services. 6.7, approve renewal of contract for youth support program, aka Winona Youth Night Campus, with Family and Children's Center. 6.8, approve renewal of purchase of service agreement for intensive residential treatment services with Hiawatha Hall, Family and Children's Center. 6.9, approve renewal of purchase of service at Host County contract with La Crosse Family and Children's Center for therapeutic foster care services. 6.10, award bid for CASA 25 concrete overlay project to Crowell, Inc. 6.11, award bid of 2018 culvert lining project to Lametti and Sons, Inc. 6.12, award bid of culvert apron and riprap work for 2018 culvert lining project to Zenke, Inc. 6.13, award bid of Winona County Road 113 and Fillmore County Road 104 full depth reclamation and overlay project to Dunn Blacktop Company. 6.14, approve advertising agreement. 6.15, approve resolution to adopt and incorporate the summary of water courses into the Winona County Comprehensive Local Water Management Plan and Root River Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan. 6.16, approve Amendment 1 to Professional Service Agreement with WHKS and Company. 6.17, approve adding Level 4 fee to Landshark Remote Access Agreement and adding Level 4 to County Fee Schedule. 6.18, confirm payment of disbursements. That concludes the consent business.
I move to approve the consent business as presented.
Second.
We have a motion made by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Jacob to approve the consent business as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Approved. 7.1, receive the SEMCAC update. And I think we have some SEMCAC staff here. Wayne?
Good morning.
Good morning.
One way of introduction, I'll introduce myself. And I'll say Cindy here. So Wayne Stenberg, Executive Director of SEMCAC.
I'm Cindy Vitsi, the Housing Coordinator.
And we'll come back to Cindy. She's actually going to update you on all the different things that are happening in housing. It's always good to come and give you the impact report and to see how your dollars are being invested back into the community. I always want to say thank you to the board. Thank you for partnering with us. We want to thank Brenda Betcher, Joe Hoffman, and of course Commissioner Pomeroy for being on the board. I know he does a great job helping us keep an eye on our finances as he sits on the financial committee. So appreciate that as well. And a lot of times he reports out what's going on. This last year we had strategic plan and we changed our mission as a group. And you see that on your first page. We empower and we advocate for people to enhance their self-sufficiency by maximizing community resources. It's always good to know that we don't duplicate resources, but we always try to partner with individuals. And we move those people to those different resources. But together we make a big impact in the area. Our clinic and our Winona Contact office is located over here on 76 West 3rd. I just saw Megan was here, so that was nice to have an update on her grant. We talked a little bit about P for Pizza. But we also rent from merchants. So a lot of our dollars that you'll see that when we're in this county go right back into the county itself and the people that work here and call Winona home. We have 4 different locations for our dining sites, Rolling Stone, St. Charles, and Winona, and then our Head Start centers. We have one located in St. Charles, and one of our bigger ones located at Winona, at the Winona HRA. And that's been a great partnership out there with Linda. If you look at our senior dining, our actual kitchen is located over at the airport. That's where we cook all of our meals for Winona County in the area. We have 8 kitchens overall, and we serve in 12 counties total. You'll notice all the hot meals that come out of there. 637 seniors served this last year, and 101 seniors in Lewiston, Minnesota City, Rolling Stone, St. Charles, Stockton, and Utica were served. And these are all delivered by volunteer drivers. So that's always good to see. We partner with a number of congregations throughout the area, and they step up. We'll talk a little bit about volunteers towards the end. You'll notice the Energy Assistance Program has ticked up a little bit. 1,186 households received assistance. Average grant is around $450 roughly. We're looking at changing some things next year. There's going to be some new software changes coming down from Energy Assistance, so we're watching that. Individuals will actually be able to go online and fill out their assistant package. We'll still monitor as far as to make sure they're eligible, but we're changing at the state, and I think some of that is due because of the need for that, and we know that individuals like to get online and do their own applications. But there's still going to be a need for us around because we have a number of individuals who still don't have access to computers. So one of the things we're looking at is possibly putting kiosk centers into our site so they'll have access to that and to ensure that everybody has the chance to get online and do their energy assistance program. And we'll also be doing paperwork as well. So we'll watch those changes, and there'll be some training coming. I don't think the state is going to ramp that up and put it out until 2019. So we're looking at a ramp up of February. So this fall, hopefully, will be business as usual as we go into our energy assistance program. And as we wrap it up now, because it usually follows the school system time frame. You see our weatherization results. We have 30 households in Winona County were weatherized. 34 of those received SIP, so that's Home Conservation Services. And when we talk about that, that could be light bulbs being updated, that could be refrigerators being replaced, and what we're looking at is Energy Star ratings for that, which lowers the total electrical usage and gas usage of that home. And when we talk about electric or related repairs like furnace replacements, we always make sure that we have local contractors in the area. We have contracts with them as well. Family planning, there you see the number of patients that we served this last year, almost 1,937 patients. A lot of those are college individuals that come in. We also have young families that come in, young mothers, fathers as well. Last year, you look at the education and outreach, over 2,400 individuals reached, and those are done in a large group. We have schools that contact us, maybe it's a high school, if it's St. Charles, if it's Rushford, they'll contact us, and Megan's been doing a lot of the teaching lately, does a great job with that. We have our outreach and emergency services support. You'll see the number of individuals that we serve, and at the bottom, that's an interesting note. You think of the individuals, we talked about not doing duplicate services. 1,609 individuals would receive referrals. That means that we're helping them find those other resources to get them back where they need to be. And we have our Head Start results on the next page. Those are all, again, over at St. Charles and over at the HRA. And then our SimCAC transportation results. These rides, we're door to door. I know that Three Rivers does the city proper. We would be your rural folks. So we've actually got routes over in St. Charles now. We've got a bus over there. We work with Nick. Nick sits on our TAC committee. It's always good to have him on board. We have also our Rides for Volunteer Driver program. Again, these are volunteers. They don't get paid to drive, but they do get mileage. And then you've heard of the deadhead miles. Those are the miles that the county helps to pay when there's nobody in the car. And what that does is it allows them to actually go out a little farther into the rural areas to get those individuals. They might end up taking them to Mayo. We do kidney dialysis. Some people get picked up constantly throughout the week for that. So it's a great service for individuals. And with that, I'll let Cindy talk a little bit about housing.
I work with the housing rehab loan programs, and basically it's with Minnesota Housing and Department of Economic Employment and Development. We do the rehab loan programs. The one that I work with is for the very low income individuals. So the income is 30% of the area median income for Minnesota, so it's extremely low. They usually cannot get a loan anywhere else. We look at health and safety. It's not a remodeling program. It's to help address accessibility and then any health and safety type items. Radon, lead-based paint are the main things we look at. Another loan program we have is the Fix-Up Fund, and that is just like a loan at a bank. They'll look at your credit history. You have to have a minimum credit score of 620, and then to show that you can afford to make a payment. So those are the two loan programs that we administer in Winona County. In the last 5 years, through the rehab program, we have done just under $600,000 worth of loans in this county alone, and through the Fix-Up Fund, we have done just under $200,000. The Small Cities Program through the Department of Employment and Economic Development, that one we have not administered a program in Winona County. Traditionally, it's been within the city. It is with the City Community Development Department, and outside the city is usually with SEMCRA out of Wabasha. But SEMCAC is also available if there is a community that would like assistance with the Small Cities Program. Okay.
Just to bounce back a little bit, Transportation Advisory Committee, those are the folks that help transportation, and they shape what they do and how they actually have their service out into the communities. We have individuals from Sturteville, we have Iota, we have St. Charles, Byron. We've got, try to get some riders that actually get on there as well. I'm an ex facto, so I don't vote, but I get to sit in the committee. And we have people from Fillmore as well. So it helps to make up our ridership. And again, it just brings individuals in that have some skin in the game and help us to make those decisions. So it's a great team. Overall statistics at the bottom there, 21,600 individuals, in addition to providing 58,000 rides for our transit system that continues to grow. We're hoping to break 60,000 this year. Right now we're in the midst, and I know Commissioner Pomeroy, we talked about the building that's being put up in Casson. That's going to be an addition for our transportation. It's going to put our administration, our dispatchers, and then all the buses on that side of the area under one roof. Plus, that's going to have a wash bay. It's about a $2.2 million project that we're working on right now. So we appreciate your guidance in that as well. And then you'll notice there's the partnerships. 1,176 partnerships and 965 organizations. Volunteers on the bottom, 1,637 volunteers, over 78,000 hours given back to the communities. And that's done on their own. And we couldn't do what we do if we didn't have that. And so we appreciate all our volunteers. And that's all I've got for you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come by and give you the impact report, and just to let you know that we'll continue to be good stewards of your dollars. Any questions for us?
Great work being done in the community.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We did have the young lady that's in charge of the senior nutrition. Her name escapes me.
Gail, Debbie,
Gail,
okay.
yeah, Gail. She came to the township officer bi-monthly meeting last time and gave a presentation, and it was very well received, and it was trying to encourage people to use the Meals on Wheels and everything. But she did just a response back. She gave a very positive report for your organization.
Thank you. I'll let her know.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have to thank Commissioner Pomeroy for serving in that capacity. Moving on to 7.2, discuss request to hire a new full-time deputy sheriff. And we have the Sheriff Tanner and Chief Deputy Mueller. I said stay healthy. I'm here. All right. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Board. We at the Sheriff's Office understand that we do not have an unlimited budget and that there needs to be a balance between public safety and the appropriate use of our tax dollars. I feel that there needs to be a balance between the two, and in my opinion, for many years, the balance has been slanted toward budgetary concerns. I requested to hire this position each of the last 3 years. My preference would really be to have 3 full-time deputies working courthouse security, but I know that's unreasonable. It's never a good time or an easy time to bring up these concerns, but this is something that I feel needs to be addressed at this time. I've had conversations with County Attorney Karen Sonneman and received written response back from her office, namely Stephanie Nuttall. Since then, I've had conversations with Ms. Sonneman, and those were about my concerns of using private security in the courthouse. Ms. Sonneman was going to review Ms. Nuttall's findings, and maybe she can address those later. I also have concerns about the legalities of using private citizens, namely our court security people, for taking people into custody in different situations in the courthouse. Currently, they take persons into custody when a judge orders it. They then will escort them back to the jail. They also go up to the Department of Corrections on the 5th floor and, with directions of DOC, take that person into custody and escort them back to the jail. Our court security people have been directed that if there is a major issue in the courthouse, that they should be calling a licensed officer to come over. We don't always have licensed personnel, obviously, in our building, so sometimes the police department responds to those calls. But they've been directed not to make that arrest in the courthouse for the unruly person or the disorderly person, that kind of thing. A concern I have with using the court security people from Premier is I don't know what kind of training they have. Since I took over as sheriff, and even before that, I've asked for their training records. I've asked personally 3 times, and I believe Chief Deputy Mueller has emailed administration up there at least twice, if not 3 times. We're still waiting to get those training records.
How long has that been going on?
That I've asked? Yeah. Since I took over as sheriff. So we haven't gotten those. I guess the big concern we have, or especially I have, is the sheriff is mandated by statute to provide security in the courthouse. We are using people in the courthouse that I don't know their training. I know what training our officers receive, and I know what officers receive throughout the state because it's mandated. And we go above and beyond the mandates. But we have use of force training every year. We have defensive tactics training every year. We're going to be having CIT, critical incident training. I'm sorry. We go on the range and we qualify twice a year at least. I know what our training is. I really don't know what their training is. The other thing we have an issue with is the turnover in staff at Premier Security, namely the courthouse. It seems like if not on a weekly, a monthly basis, we have somebody new coming in, and typically Steve Buswell, the jail administrator, will go over and work directly with his staff, with them, and make sure that they're up to speed on what we do in our courthouse and how we do it. But you can understand, if we keep having new people, I don't know what training they have. I can't keep up with, even when we had John and Chad there for years. But lately we've had a big turnover. I know there's talk about us losing a judge. We're still at 2.7% of needing a judge. that 7%, if we do go down to 2 judges, will have to be filled somewhere. But the court security does not just sit in the courtroom. Matter of fact, most of the time I don't think there's 3 courtrooms going, but sometimes there is. But we would like to have somebody at the magnetometer out front and providing security before people get into the courthouse. So far this year, well, actually, January and February of this year, we've already paid overtime over $10,000 to bring the prisoners here and to man the magnetometer because of the cases we've had going through the courthouse. So again, we had talked about this issue a couple months ago when we asked for the emergency management / deputy sheriff, and thank you for giving us a full-time emergency manager. But I think this is important too, and we've talked about it for a few years. Questions?
Questions of the board?
Yeah.
Can I speak to this before there's questions?
Sure, sure.
Sheriff Ganrud and Chief Deputy Mueller had asked me to review this back in March of 2017 when I was on medical leave after heart surgery. Assistant County Attorney Stephanie Nuttall was asked to at least look this over. There had been a memo issued by the Sheriff's Association Counsel, Rick Hodgson, who's also an assistant county, Washington County attorney. And he also provides advice in general to the whole county attorneys who are on his web or on his email link. So I hadn't really had the opportunity to look at this issue back when it at least was first broached in March, at least to our office. I've read Ms. Nuttall's comment, which was in the form of an email, and attorneys can differ on interpretation. I don't feel that the comment that she gave at the time fully had been researched, and so I've had an opportunity to look at this again, and I apologize for not being able to write an actual memo to this. But I'm concerned from a point of view of, first of all, liability to the county, to continue to use security guards, which we've done for years and years and years. I took, I guess, great comfort that one of those security guards, John Grable, was a retired police officer and I think still maintained his post standards. But I have concerns from a liability point of view because there is a statute, 84, which is the post-board licensing statute that talks about, and there's a difference of opinion. This is where Ms. Nuttall, I think, interpreted it maybe a different way. But as I read it, and as I read Mr. Hodgson's memo, which he wrote on behalf or in request by Houston County Sheriff Mark Inglet on a very similar subject, which was security guards in their courthouse. And the conclusion really is, first of all, be cautious because there are potential liability issues. One of the recommendations he made was that if you are going to hire security guards, that contract includes some pretty high insurance coverage figures that the contractor will carry. But he also cautioned that may not make a difference either, because if the county is sued, if there is an incident at the courthouse involving a security guard or something happens and there's a liability issue, it's not going to matter too much to who's suing the county that the security company has insurance coverage. They're going to still go after the county. And it is Sheriff Ganrud's legal responsibility, as he said, and it is in the statutes, to supervise and maintain security at the courthouse. And as Ron said, even if we do lose a judge and we're only down to 2 judges, we will still have visiting judges and all 3 courtrooms will be operating. and all the floors and every nook and cranny of the courthouse. So I support very strongly the sheriff's office request for a deputy full-time to be supervising if we continue with the security guards, but also have that deputy on duty. Right now, and I think people, they groan when they come to the courthouse and say, oh, we have to go through the magnometer, but it's like being at the airport. You're glad that that security is there. But right now it's being supervised by, I would say, young reserve officers, and so to have a deputy on duty dedicated full-time to the courthouse in the end is going to, I think, save the county money. And we also, if you recall, the courthouse went through a security review by at the direction really of the Supreme Court. All the courthouses went through that after that horrible incident in Grand Marais, where the county attorney and some of his staff was shot by a defendant who just got sentenced in a crim sex case. So I think it's really important to prepare for the not if but when something might happen in the courthouse. So I just want to give my very strong endorsement of what Sheriff Ganrud and Chief Deputy Mueller are asking for here. It will be money well spent and it's really a fiduciary responsibility, I think, of this county to support security in the courthouse.
Okay. Commissioner Jacob, did you?
Yeah. Coming into this, just having read what I read in our packet, my thoughts were somewhat that by hiring a full-time emergency management position, that we had essentially taken a half a position away, because Mike Peterson was serving two purposes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when we replaced his position, we dedicated his position fully to this, to his new job, which took 50%. So I thought, I could see that need. But as I listen to your case and your case, I'm extremely disheartened to hear the seeds of distrust planted in private sector. For us to really be kind of somewhat undermining the integrity of Premier Security without them at the table to defend themselves and talk about their good work, I don't feel good about that. If we're going to make this decision and we're going to sit here and disparage a private industry, I don't have any proof that they're not a good company doing good work. And then furthermore, Attorney Sonneman, you go on to talk about the potential liabilities of private sector in the courthouse. I've learned very recently that we can be sued from within the county too. And then furthermore, there's the union that goes along with the county employees, which we seem to have even less control over. So at this point, knowing that there is a judgeship position that might be being reviewed, we might not have possibly as much activity in the courthouse. My sense is more that this should be tabled until the people that we're disparaging are at the table to defend themselves. I felt going into this that
I'm not saying that we've had issues with the staff. I'm not saying that John Grable didn't do a good job over at the courthouse. I think that I would agree with Ms. Sonneman that he in particular was very good over there and handled a lot of situations, didn't have to call us to come over and handle it. The other ones that they've had there have handled situations. We've had serious situations there, but it's nice to have somebody available and there right away. But again, I'm not saying that the two that we have right now aren't doing their job and can't do their job. I'm saying that I don't know what training they've had. I know what training we have. I think that this position is a deputy position. It's important to have licensed officers trained out on the road in a squad car taking care of things. The people that, and I'm getting this from our conversation this morning, the people that come to the courthouse are a lot of the people that my deputies or the police department have just arrested, and now they're coming back to the courthouse, not in very good terms. They just got out of jail and have to come back to court. Now we have somebody that's a premier security guard or courthouse security handling that situation, dealing with that person. What training do they have? I don't know. I think it's important to have trained people, and they say they're trained.
Do you have a record of how often you've asked email? I mean, why wasn't that included? This kind of stubbornness of a security company to turn over training records.
I don't know if it is or not. I know that I asked when Gideon got hired to come here to the courthouse, I asked him. He said his brother took care of that. He could get them for me. I never got them. When Chad Reddy was there, I asked him. When Tim Kapusman stopped in, I asked him. When Jeff took over, he started sending emails to, I'm not sure who he had.
I just never feel comfortable about he said, she said, or they said, without the other party there to defend themselves to say, well, yeah, we provided it here, here, and here, and you didn't look at it. I mean, I don't know that. And then you also talk about the turnover, and that's a concern to you. How many times has the chief deputy position turned over since you've taken office?
3.
Okay, well, I mean, it happens in the...
3 in 3 years. I'm talking about 4 in 2 months.
Okay. It can happen in government as well as private sector. I mean, we get turnover. It happens.
If I could add to your comments, Commissioner Jacobs, I actually appreciate the comment about the private sector and you explaining that in generalities. I'm in favor of the private sector be able to supplement the public sector in certain circumstances. If it's any equivalence to draw, I'm not sure it's the best one, but in thinking about it, we send licensed deputies who are post-board certified out into squad cars, patrol around, answer calls, do all the different stuff that they do. The positions at the courthouse, I would only draw the equivalence that those are those positions. They're that important at the courthouse. They're that important at the courthouse for all of the job that they do. And so the same concern that I would have about sending a premier security officer out who probably, whatever training that they have and they've gone through and everything else, I wouldn't send them out in that squad car to patrol around. Maybe cheaper to do, I'm not sure, once it's all said and done, than having the Minnesota post-board trained officer go do that. So in general terms, when it's appropriate to have private security supplement, I think it is appropriate to be able to do. In this situation at the courthouse, it kind of almost screams of that a little bit. We have been having the private security to do. We want to continue to have that private security because, just like the sheriff said, totally eliminating them and still having to meet the requirements of the personnel that's needed at the courthouse is expensive and would be very expensive. And so to try to mitigate that, although it doesn't get rid of all the different issues that we potentially would have that the county attorney had mentioned with still having the private security at the courthouse, I think it's at least a step in the right direction maybe to mitigate some of those concerns.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate your discussion. Does the current contract with the private security company include a liability amount, and do we know how much that liability that contractor carries?
Yeah, if I can answer that, Commissioner Kavesi, the current contract, which was signed by the board back in February of 2017, does have liability coverage, and it's $300,000 personal injury and/or death per person, $1 million personal injury and/or death per occurrence, and $50,000 in property damage.
Okay, so I agree that a person could sue both entities actually, because legally the sheriff has a legal duty to supervise and staff courthouse and court security. I don't want to compromise, this is really public safety in the courthouse. And we have seen an increase in what I would call serious crimes. We've seen an increase in drug crimes, and some of those are repeat offenders, like the sheriff was saying. So you kind of build up an attitude with that kind of person, perhaps, that isn't necessarily respectful of law and order. I disagree with the term disparagement of the private company. I think what you've pointed out are the facts and the history that we know, and it's really not the individuals who are standing over there and doing their job. It's the management of that company. Why can't they just respond and say, here's our training records? Why can't they? Do they ever explain why people are turning over so fast? Or do they take other jobs or better jobs? Or, I mean, 4 people in 2 months is very high turnover. And to me, that's a critical position over there because it's related to public safety. So you've pointed that out. It's no reflection on the people who are over there. It's management of that company. So if we have the legal duty, the board and the sheriff, to fill this position, we did, at the time you were here before, you were asking for a compromised permission or position then, and we said, no, it's so important to have an emergency management person full-time, which left a big hole on the other position or the other half position that you were requesting. So in a sense, we asked you to request this by increasing the other position. So I feel that the liability issue is an issue. It's not a threat. It's just an issue. It's in the background. It's there. It's with every one of our officers, basically. So I feel that we should go ahead and honor this request at this time.
Commissioner Olson.
Ron, I guess in listening to what Commissioner Kavesi said and what Commissioner Jacobs said, I guess a question came to mind is, countywide, from border to border, is this the most critical part of security in Winona County? Is that courthouse right now? Crime?
Yes, I feel it is. I felt it's been that way for quite a while. We never used to have court security at all. And then the decision was made to go with a security company. And ultimately that changed back and forth till we've been with Premier for quite a while. I would love to have another investigator. I would love to have a couple of more patrolmen. But we get by with what we have. Since I started with the county 30 whatever years ago, we added one position on a COPS grant, and we hired Bill Spitzer back then. And then we've added the investigator spot. That's it for the sheriff's office for licensed officers, 2 spots in 30-some years. So I do feel, I'm going around and around, but I do feel that this is very important and this is our greatest need right now.
Okay. I do have a little bit of concern over the precedent that this is setting, that you stand before us requesting a position, kind of, and we asked you to, and I understand that, kind of circumnavigating the process of asking for personnel through the procedures that we do have established. But what would stop every department head or every department from standing before our podium and asking for equal need of personnel without proper review? And I've heard now twice today, and I've confirmed with Maureen, and now the waters are muddy again. Is this person going to be a supervisor? I've heard that they're going to supervise specifically, I think, Attorney Solomon said it, and I think you said it, they will supervise the security force, the private security. Are they going to be a supervisor?
I guess I wasn't asking for a supervisor. I was asking more of what we have on the night shift of a lead person that would direct, but also be there in the courthouse to take over the serious situations that arise.
Now, Commissioner Jacob mentioned dealing with our unions twice today, now 3 times. I've heard this person's going to be a supervisor. We have a lawsuit right now over somebody disagreeing with their role and responsibility with Winona County.
Okay. We do have the lead deputy position in the contract, and the lead deputy is not a supervisor, but he does direct the other deputies on his shift.
I'm just,
I would.
that's
I would
just a red
say-
flag is,
Yeah, I would say until this would get ironed out, we would have to work with Marine, the county, the union, and describe what the actual duties of this person would be. But again, I'm asking for a deputy. I'm not asking for a lieutenant.
okay. And then, the liability issues that they brought up, and regardless of what would happen, there's going to be liability on everybody's part. So that doesn't hold any water with me. I'm very reluctant to support this. I don't like the process, even though we invited you to do this.
Well, yes.
Just,
and
can I finish?
I'm sorry.
And that's our fault. But we did invite this through our previous conversation over the other position. So I'm just very reluctant, and today I can't support it. I'm sorry.
Okay, Attorney Sonneman.
Just wanted to respond to Commissioner Jacob and his, I guess, I am not disparaging private security services by my support of Sheriff Ganwood's request here. And specifically regarding the courthouse, it's a unique building in the sense that it has certain very unique requirements for security that are directly, or that Sheriff Ganwood has direct responsibility over. So you could use a private security firm as we've been doing, but that firm has to answer to the sheriff's directions. And also, there's certain things that a private security firm cannot do because these are not licensed officers. They're not police officer, the post board trained officers. And so the law is very specific as to who can arrest people, who can carry a gun into the courthouse. And so I'm not disparaging any private business. And in fact, security guards are great to have for, commercial buildings and or government buildings that are courthouses. But courthouses are a unique unto themselves in that the sheriff has this extraordinary responsibility of maintaining security there. And the concern then comes from the use of private security guards as a cost-saving measure. That's what I am concerned about. And then you compromise the security and also the ability of Sheriff Ganwood to maintain that security. So I think, again, spending a little extra money, and it actually, I think, will save, and this is just my anecdotal, because I've also been here for over 27 years now in the courthouse daily. And, spend some time in the courthouse and you'll realize that there are opportunities there. I mean, and it's not just criminal cases. It's more likely divorce cases. It's more likely orders for protection cases where people are at their worst and angry, that we can have some security issues. So I feel it's important, and I've been working with since I became county attorney, I've been exposed to all of the security needs of the courthouse and really the campus area. around the courthouse. And so it is important from those of us who work in the courthouse and are in court every day to uphold the law, really.
Okay, I've got Commissioner Pomeroy, then Commissioner Jacob, then Commissioner Olson.
Well, first off, I think what I want to say here is that I respect the views of every person at the table, and their reasoning and logic supporting their conclusions. In my personal situation here, I think that the attorney and the sheriff and chief deputy have made a compelling case, and on that basis, I support the request.
Commissioner Jacob.
I guess one thing I'm wondering is, and before I say that, I'd say that I feel obligated to give them at least a half. Is it possible to give them a half-time employee? Because I feel like we authorized to take half of Mike Peterson's position and dedicate it. I feel like that wasn't really Ron or Jeff for the department, that we made that decision at this table. I kind of feel like we're obligated to give them at least a half a position back.
Can I address that real quick? Remember when we had Mike's position, he was doing a couple of functions. One was dispatch supervisor. We actually hired a dispatch supervisor. So when we split his position, we actually split it in two, and we hired a dispatch supervisor. So then
Full-time.
Yeah, full-time. So really we only had a half of an emergency management coordinator available in the budget. What was approved last month was a full-time emergency management, which we actually did. We put it in the budget in anticipation of maybe needing to deal with that. But the bottom line is we've got two positions now where we had one.
So we did hire. Okay. So there's not a deficiency there.
Nothing dangling out there from the original Mike Peterson.
I thought from our second or from our most recent decision that we had taken.
No, it sounds like somewhere I got confused with that at halftime, but that had already been addressed.
All right. And I guess the other thing that I just am struggling with is, why is Premier Security not at the table today? I mean, it just feels like, Ron, you're saying they won't give me this information. It feels a little bit like we're having a trial here, and we've got a very qualified attorney. We've got one side of the issue, and the other side is absent. They don't have representation. They're private. It doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right.
I guess if I was saying, let's end our contract with Premier Security because they're not doing a good job, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'd like to supplement that. I would love to keep the two security people that we have, but I want somebody overseeing them that's more in line with a license. Well, that is a licensed peace officer. That is probably more better trained because we are licensed, and I never thought to ask Premier Security to come here because I never thought we're asking you to end their contract. So I never thought of that, I guess.
But they've been brought up multiple times as, I feel like, seeds of maybe that they're not as qualified as the government officials are, and I feel like they're not here to.
I am saying that.
This doesn't feel right.
I am saying that. I'm saying that we are mandated by statute to be trained, and we make sure that we have the training we have every year, and that we have the training not just every year, but every 3 years to keep our license active.
But
And there's a reason we have that training, right? I mean,
so you're implying that they're not trained by saying that.
they tell me they're trained. I say,
Yeah, so we don't know if they're not, and I don't have them here saying that. I mean, maybe they have proof.
And that information should be readily available.
That should be
Just-
here.
Maybe the argument would be more appropriate if we were here asking for another Premier Security officer as a third officer for that. But in trying to make the case to you as to why we're not making that, is that disparaging them? I don't think so. I mean, we're not saying we want to get rid of, like you said, what we already have. We're here to make the case that we want a licensed officer for all the stuff that we had talked about, why they get the requirements for the license and everything else. Is that on a scale of, you want to say, more qualified, whatever the right adjective is to say that it's something better than premier security. Well, we're not here asking for a third security officer, and we are here asking for the licensed officer to oversee them. So,
Yeah, I represent the government, but I represent the citizenry too. And the citizenry has every right to vie for this position that you do. I mean, maybe they want to be here saying, no, we should be the one getting the position, not the government.
but have we expressed to you
Your side.
some of the
you clearly
deficiencies?
yeah.
Some of the deficiencies, as the attorney had mentioned too, some of the deficiencies that the private security can only offer, in essence, because they are only private security. And I don't say that as a disparaging, like they're only private security, but there's a reason that the state of Minnesota has a whole licensing system that you need to go through to be a peace officer and everything else. You know what I mean? Otherwise,
But
it'd be a lot easier for everybody to do that, I guess. And so the different schooling, education, requirements, training, all the different stuff that you would check the boxes for the licensed officer. Does Premier Security have less than that? I'd make the case that any security company, not Premier Security Company, just any security company, doesn't meet those requirements. Hence, the turnover rate a lot of times on Premier Security are people who are looking for law enforcement jobs and are in the pipeline, if you will, to get those. You know what I mean? And so,
I don't disagree with any of that, but it just feels inappropriate for you to give your side without them giving their side standing right next to you, because I'm guessing that they'd have a litany of, I mean, if this is what, it just feels like a court setting with an attorney, and it just, I feel like they should be at the table for this.
Okay, I've got Commissioner Olson and then Commissioner Kavesi.
Ron, earlier you had said that this is your number one concern in Winona County is the security at the courthouse. Is there any reason you haven't assigned somebody there that is currently on patrol, or?
Well, if I take somebody off the road to put them on.
Number one concern, you said.
Yeah, I have a lot of concerns.
Number one.
Number one, if I took your question to be, if you could have another deputy, where would you put him? I would put him in the courthouse. But I don't have the staff. As I said, we've only advanced two spots in 30 years. The number of people we have in the jail has, in that 30 years, when I started here, 30 years ago, what did we have? 11 inmates. How many inmates? 19, 20? We're at 60 every day now. The police department is busy all the time. People are getting arrested. But again, to answer the question I thought you asked, if we gave you a deputy, where's your number one place you'd want him? I want him in the courthouse. If I don't get another deputy, I don't have the staff to take him. I'm not going to take one of my drug investigators or my other investigators or the 3 day shift deputies we have or the 4 night shift deputies and place them in the courthouse, because it's important to have them out in the county. But again, I would love to have more staff out on patrol, but I'm not even asking for that.
Well, I'm not going to, I'm making a motion. So,
Well, I got Commissioner Kavesi, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I don't need to be in the queue to make a motion.
Okay.
We can stop discussion.
Yes.
I'm not saying I don't agree with anything here. At this point, I'm going to make a motion to table this request until we have both sides of this issue at the table.
Okay, we have a motion to table until both sides are present.
I'll second the motion for discussion, because I don't think we have a question of being who's at the table. I think we have a question of who's going to be the security. But I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Olson to table.
Question?
But now we
Is
want,
that motion debatable?
well, I don't, once you put a motion on the floor to
Well,
table,
no, I mean a
it
motion
ends-
to table, doesn't that end discussion?
I was going to say, yes, that ends discussion.
I had some questions. Can I ask a question?
Well, wait,
We have an
we got-
attorney here.
Yeah, I'm looking at the summary of motions list, laying it on the table, which
we have.
takes a second You've got the second. Debatable, no. Amendable, no. Majority vote required to set aside an item of business temporarily.
So it's not debatable.
Not debatable.
So you have to call the question, though.
I have questions about the issue, not necessarily the motion. Is that what's in the queue to
No,
ask?
we have to vote on the motion, and the motion would end discussion at
Vote
this
is
time.
required with a majority. Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
in
so we have
my-
to vote on the motion
We
to
have to
table.
vote on the motion. If the motion passes, then to my knowledge, discussion ends at this time, not to say that we can't bring it back at a future.
It's temporarily tabling the issue.
Okay. So we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries to table until another point in time, which is to be determined by the board?
Or, or if the sheriff, I guess, wants to bring it back for discussion at a later time.
Following the proper processes to put things on a board agenda. Okay, all right.
However, could I just make a suggestion here? That if you were to bring it back to have the information, compel the information from the private security firm with regard to training and such? I mean, you do have a contract with them, and so as part of their contract, what you may do is require them to provide you the training. Because that seems to be one of your concerns.
So would you ask us to invite them to a board meeting, or will Mr. Fritz be doing that? Or
Well, I think there's some unclarity as to what our contract is. We have contracts. We have contracts in every aspect of county government. Who's managing the contract? Who is at the sheriff, and it's the sheriff office, who's managing Premier contract now? Because the way I see it is that it's our contract, but it's your contract. You are statutorily, you reminded us that you're statutorily required to provide this. So to me, it's your contract first, and how's it being managed? Obviously, there's problems.
Yeah, the way I understand it is that when you table the motion like that, it's up to them to decide whether they want to bring it back or not.
Right, with some
If they-
additional
if the sheriff-
and new
If the
information.
sheriff wants to bring it back, then he should bring that information, which includes anything that what Jim just mentioned, or in the case of bringing Premier actually here, because that was part of the discussion.
And Greg's concerns, we're dealing with union issues here.
But as far as that goes, Ken, is typically they're going to work with you, not with us. And I know we invited this process, but
And Marine, and HR.
can we go back to how
Yeah, we can do
that
anything.
process
the
is
board wants,
supposed to
but I'm
work
just-
to make
yeah.
a request?
Sure.
You would give us your opinion,
Yeah, sure.
and so it could end with you rather than with us.
Well, in what way? That I'm not
Well-
following.
Because every year when you do budgets, you decide
Oh,
which conversations come forward.
yeah, but that's not, it's just tabled, so, from that perspective, I mean, I wouldn't want to stand in the way of them bringing it back now since it was
Fair
already
enough.
raised.
Fair enough.
I mean, I think,
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
next time. Moving on to 7.3, approve resolution proclaiming National Crime Victims' Rights Week. I think Attorney Sonneman?
Thank you. I'm going to first start by passing this around. Please grab a ribbon and pass it back to me so I can. In my office, we have the Crime Victims Office. It's funded by a grant through the state of Minnesota and also federal funds through the Violence Against Women Act. And our grant is specific to prosecutorial work because we are required by statute to assist victims, assist victims of crimes that the county attorney's office prosecutes. This week, actually starting April 8th, is the National Crime Victims Week. And every year we've come before you asking for you to support a resolution, a proclamation declaring National Crime Victims Week here in Winona County. I just want to give you a little bit of background. I know it's been a long meeting already. But in 2017, Our office filed charges in over 350 adult criminal cases involving over 400 victims. And our records indicate that there were over 3,000 recorded contacts with victims in 2017 by our Victim Services Office. And that doesn't include some of the many contacts then that aren't recorded where a victim may call and speak to the prosecuting attorney or stop in. And although we work very closely with other agencies in the county, the county attorney's office, thank you, Ron, is solely responsible for meeting the statutory obligations for notification and ensuring that rights of victims are upheld in our cases. So among the many activities that our Crime Victims Office does, which includes much outreach and education, we do support and celebrate an annual observance of National Crime Victims Week, which is April 8th through the 14th. And this year's theme is Expand the Circle, Reach All Victims, which emphasizes the importance of inclusion in victim services. Among the many activities that we're hosting this week, if you're into yoga, we are sponsoring on April 11th in connection with the Muddy Waters Yoga Studio, which I believe is in that relatively new building on Huff Street, there where the Timbers was. There will be a Yoga for a Cause, which will focus on healing and strength through trauma-informed yoga practice. On April 12th, in collaboration with Winona State, we'll be co-hosting 2 LGBTQ speakers, and that will focus on addressing the needs of LGBTQ survivors and the needs of marginalized individuals who are too often ignored. On April 17th, which is outside of the National Crime Victims Week, but is also an annual event dedicated to victims of crime, is Take Back the Night at Winona State. And that's the opportunity for victims of crimes to share their stories and receive victims' rights and services and local resources. A new thing that we're doing this year at the Winona County Law Library, we're going to create a new section there dedicated to crime victims. And this will be unique and will serve as a hub of information for victims on their rights, the criminal justice process, local resource centers, and all services available to them. The color blue of these ribbons that I handed out represents Crime Victims Week, and we ask that you wear these ribbons this week to show your support for crime victims. And we ask that you approve the proclamation. So thank you. If you have any questions?
I move to adopt the resolution and proclamation.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Olson, to approve the proclamation for National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 8th through the 14th. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We have therefore so proclaimed.
Thank you.
I do find it interesting in your verbiage, though, that on the background, the section 611A.015, how it breaks out juveniles, and it says proceedings involving any other act committed by a juvenile that would be a crime as defined if committed by an adult. Mm-hmm. So what's the age of a juvenile? I mean, if a crime is a crime, does it really matter what age?
Well, that's where the law is very specific. Juvenile delinquencies are not crimes, but they are charged using the same elements of a crime if the person was an adult. So a juvenile is anyone under 17 and under, unless they've been certified as an adult, depending on the severity of the crime. So, and Minnesota is very specific on that. The purpose of juvenile court is to restore and rehabilitate, so that kids don't have a criminal record. And actually, a juvenile delinquency is by definition not a crime. So that's why that language is there.
All right.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, 7.4, discuss and appoint Citizen Advisory Committee volunteer, page 169. We have a new person applying for the Extension Committee.
I'll move to approve Teresa Grassel as appointed Extension Committee to fill the vacancy.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Pomeroy to approve Teresa Grassel as the Extension Committee appointee. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. I will just share, at an extension committee meeting, there were several people in the community that had expressed some interest, but they were, for lack of better words, intimidated by our application process.
I've heard that too.
I'm sorry, I agree with them. For our voluntary citizen committees, it's more like and it's a lot. I mean, it's too, in my opinion, it's too much to ask them to fill this out. It's like they're applying for a job. I think it's correlated to applying for employment with Winona County, and these are unpaid positions. So somehow, I think we need to simplify the questions.
Put that on the agenda to discuss. I mean, I feel like there should be like a resubmit button too when they want to fill their second term, to not have to.
And I've had discussions with Maureen Hulte, and it's.
Does that need to be a future agenda item? I mean, I don't know how much discussion we can have here.
I think what we can do is we'll explore the options, and then we can bring something maybe in a working session that kind of says, here's kind of what we can do and can't do easily.
Yeah, okay.
And then you can figure out what works, I guess.
I mean, we need to simplify it for applicants and staff, because I think staff is being required to do a lot more than they need to in reviewing this and everything. So, okay, so you're asking for a future work session topic?
Yeah.
That makes sense, okay. We're in agreement to that? All right, thank you. And we'll let Teresa know that she's been appointed. I think all our committees are currently staffed, full?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's good, that's good. Thank you to all the citizens that volunteer for our numerous committees. Any other business? Let's see, we had Attorney Sonneman.
Well, two things. First, I want to thank everybody, citizens, department heads, the board, for the comments that were submitted to the Supreme Court regarding the potential loss of a third judge in Winona County District Court. Those comments were running significantly in the positive to keeping a judge here. So in checking them the other day, how many came in, and can't give you an actual total yet, but it's at least over, I would say, 20 to 30 people, which is, I think, pretty unique for Supreme Court comment on this issue. So I just wanted to thank everybody on the board again for supporting that resolution. The other thing, which is kind of a fun thing, I hope, I was asked, I'm sure some of you remember Lynn Thoyer, who was the retired public health director of the Winona County. Well, back in 2009, the courthouse, and it's been a courthouse day, I guess, here, we put on, through CJCC, the courthouse open house, and we put on a play about a 1941 raid on 2nd Street down here in Winona, which included an appearance by Kate Smith singing God Bless America. So I played Kate Smith and sang that. And so Lynn asked me to help out at the Winona Health Volunteers. They used to call it the Follies Show. So this year, the Winona Health Volunteers is putting on a USO variety show covering World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam War, and it's honoring our veterans. And the show is Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday, a matinee and evening performance. The evening performances are at 7 p.m., and the matinee is at, I believe, 1 o'clock. Tickets are $15. It's at the Winona Middle School, and for veterans, tickets are $10. The Winona Hymns are also singing. They were beautiful last night at rehearsal. But I will be reprising my role as Kate Smith. And those of you at the Land Records meeting the other day, I was asked by Bob Bamenek to give a little preview, and so I'm not going to do that today.
Changing careers?
Come to the show.
I can attest that at 9 o'clock in the morning she was on key.
New career?
Well, I've always sung things, but let's just say it's my avocation is music. So, but please come out and support both the Winona Health Volunteers and honor our veterans. It's a long variety show of the if you recall some of the days from, Carol Burnett and that kind of stuff. But it's fun, and there's something for everyone, including Age of Aquarius, but nobody's going to be nude on stage, so. Anyways, but thanks for the opportunity to talk about that.
Okay, just one quick thing, an event that's going on across the street at Winona National is the Hands For. It was a child abuse, the poster contest, and I know several of us were there for the winners. You can just walk into the lobby, it used to be, the theme was an anti, hands, and now it's what you should use your hands for. And it's everything from playing basketball to milking cows to planting gardens to selfies. But a lot of great artwork from our youth, and you can just walk in. And we do appreciate Winona National Bank always being a great host of that event. And the award winners were presented last week. So if you got a minute, staff from this building or anybody in downtown, stop in and take a look. It's some really good artwork by our youth. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Do we adjourn first, or do we go into closed session and then
Well,
adjourn after that?
I have adjourned and then I'd read this.
Yeah, that's what I looked at too, but don't we usually
sometimes we do it
state?
Closed session?
I would adjourn to the closed session, or that you'd
And then come back
recess
and
to a closed session, then,
Yeah, I think
A motion to recess?
and then a motion for the closed session. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
Motion to recess, entertain a motion to
Yeah.
recess.
a motion to recess to closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03 Subdivision 1B to discuss strategies for labor negotiations for all collective bargaining groups.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Olson to adjourn for closed session, or to recess for
Closed session.
to a closed session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved. Okay.